Hello and welcome to fantasyfootballhub.co.uk. My name is Dan, aka FPL Mate. My first time on this YouTube channel, so very excited to get started. And I'm with someone you may be a little bit more familiar with on this channel, Wes, aka FPL Heisenberg.
Cheers, Dan. Thanks for the introduction. And yes, thanks for joining us on Fantasy Football Hub's YouTube channel. Obviously, you guys might recognise me from some other videos on here or some articles on site. And I'm sure you recognise Dan from his very big YouTube channel himself. So yeah, I'm excited to get this started, mate.
Yes, really excited for this new season that new series that we're gonna be doing this season throughout the year. Every week we're gonna be doing a Q&A video where you guys can ask us some questions and we'll do our best to answer them in as much detail as physically possible, I suppose. Before we do get started though, do want to say, please guys, do sign up to fantasyfootballhub.co.uk this year. You get 25% off as a pre-season discount. The link for that is in the description, so do check that out. Members get unlimited access to all of Hub's tools. So you've got OptaStats, which is my favourite. I'm absolutely obsessed with the OptaStats tool on Fantasy Football Hub. We've got the player comparison tool, the fixture ticker, rate my team tool, team reveals, loads of stuff, guys. So you don't want to miss out, and it's really going to help you out this season. I can tell you that for sure. So, Wes, are you ready to get involved with some of these questions that have been sent in to us?
Yeah, let's go for it, mate. Let's dig.
Yeah, should we go straight in with them?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Okay. So, I'm going to start off with a question from Marco. And Marco has said, opinions on a 7.5 million options. Maybe looking at Pepe for game week 4 onwards. If he starts like Jota, but won't start with him, then Tsimikas is obviously a question with Jota as well, because we need those 3 Liverpool slots. Yeah. And then he says, last slot for Greenwood or Gundogan/Torres. He may go for Gundogan to have a City player ahead of Norwich, but right now he's on Greenwood and maybe use that free transfer on a likely starter versus Norwich game week 2. Yeah. So that's quite a long question.
It is.
But basically we're looking at 7.5 midfield options. Who do you fancy, Wes?
So it's interesting he mentioned Gundogan and Greenwood there, because they're 2 I'm considering for my own team. And what I would say straight away, going right towards the end of his question, he sort of said he might use his free transfer to go from Greenwood to Gundogan in game week 2. I'd advise against that. I'd pick whoever you want for the first few game weeks right now, because if you're booking in a transfer in week 2, you might get a couple of injuries elsewhere, and then all of a sudden you can't get the player you want. So I wouldn't book in a team and then look at booking in a transfer for the very next game week straight away. But yeah, a lot of those players, they are good options. There's no sort of right or wrong, but there's pros and cons to all of these options. The City boys, a bit of rotation risks maybe. Pepe again, maybe a rotation risk. So, and likewise with Jota as well, to be fair. For me, if I'm going to pick an actual player out of those, my favourite out of those options is Greenwood. But yeah, I think just look into those and see who you want for at least the first 4 to 6 game weeks, I'd say.
That is the problem with those 7.5 million midfielders, really, isn't it? Because a lot of them around that price range are those rotation risks. So it's really hard to pick which one you want to go for. Yeah.
Just to add a little bit onto that, and then we can move on to another question if you want. But there's also, you don't have to spend, if you've got 7.5 million for your last slot in midfield, you could always go for a 7.0 option and save 0.5 in the bank, which does give flexibility for your transfer come game week 2, game week 3. With the price changes, that 0.5 in the bank is really helpful. So I do like Harvey Barnes at 7 million. Even someone like Sarr from Watford, I think he's 6.0.
He is, yes.
Yeah, and obviously there's, assuming as Rafinha hasn't come up here, he may already have him in his team. But again, there are some options cheaper than 7.5 you can consider, save that money back or improve other areas of your team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do completely agree with your point of not booking in transfers pre-season. Pick one and stick with them and then adapt as we get a bit more information as the season begins. So let's move on to another question. This one is from Mark Bickley. He says it's his first time playing FPL, an exciting time. Welcome to the club, I suppose. Yeah. And he's wondering, what's a good point haul for the first game week or a good rank for a newbie after the first week of matches?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and probably one that I was thinking when I first started playing. However, don't worry about that because it's all relative to the average score. So if the average score is 30 for week 1, really low, and you get 50, then brilliant. But flip side to that, if the average score is 100 and you end up getting 80, it's actually a bad week. in relation to the rest of the field. So it's always relative. FPL game week to game week, it's always relative to the rest of the scores. And what the other part of his question was a good
kind
rank.
of good rank. Well, I usually would say that if I finish game week 1 with a rank inside the top 1 million, I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah,
you're the same.
Yeah, especially because it's lopsided as well, because a lot of people will just use a chip in their first game week, which is something I don't advise. But people will not really understand the game. They'll maybe use a triple captain or a bench boost, so you will have inflated scores there. And yeah, rank those first sort of few weeks it's a really weird. I can't really describe it, but it almost doesn't mean anything really. Obviously, you don't want to have a catastrophic week and be in the 4 millions or something, but that can happen, and you can still build back up. But just worry about getting your team right in those first few weeks. Get the information in. You will make mistakes pre-season. I made loads for my game week 1 squad last year. Looking back, I had a couple of rotation missed players and a couple of bad picks. So most players do that, and it's about in those first few weeks getting the team you want, maybe even an early wild card, and then bump it at the round. But yeah, it's a really good rule of thumb that you just said there about being in the top 1 million. That is decent enough. So yeah, if my game week 1 rank was 800k, I'd be happy.
Laughing. Yeah, you're laughing, aren't you?
But I wouldn't want to be there come the end of the season.
No.
So yeah, but I think again, there's things that go around on sort of Twitter saying like if you had a game week rank of 1 million every single week, I could be wrong here by the way, but you'd end up in the top 10k or something like that.
Yeah,
so,
I think I've seen that as well.
Yeah, I don't get how that maths works. Maybe someone more clever than me can let me know.
It's about consistency. You'd be in the top. Well, I'm going to do some terrible maths really quickly here, but you'd be in the top sort of 15% every single week, whereas other people are bouncing from being top 5% and then top 40% and apparently it works out. I believe it. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, I believe it as well. So yeah, exactly that. Top 1 million-ish is good, but again, if you haven't got that, don't give up. Just keep going, and you can make. I've seen so many managers last year, including myself, end up with a good rank after either an average or a poor start.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, next question from FPL United. A little bit more straightforward, this one. He says, start 1, Sofal or Rafinha?
Rafinha, for me, I would, if I've got a 6.5 million midfielder, I'm very rarely going to bench them, and especially not for a defender. So for me, the answer there is quite simple, and Rafinha. So yeah, I'll answer that one quite simply. Hopefully that's given my thought process, but in a nice, concise way, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, usually you back the attacker, don't you?
I do personally, yeah.
I think there is a debate to be had here for Sofal, I really do, because he plays Newcastle in his first game.
Yeah.
Whereas Rafinha plays Manchester United. How much are we expecting from Rafinha in the first game? You'd be happy with 5 points, really, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Yeah, you would be happy with an assist, yeah.
Potential for a clean sheet, especially if Areola starts for West Ham, who I think is an absolutely cracking goalkeeper, by the way.
I agree.
Then Sofal's going to be quite the nice pick. But there's a debate to be had. Why do you have both Rafinha and Sofal if you're going to have to bench one as well?
Exactly that. That was my next point in terms of sort of my team structure. Probably wouldn't allow that question to be asked because my bench is currently sort of 4.0 defender, I think, Amati, and then Brownhill is kind of on my bench every week. I've got 3 decent defenders in a 3-4-3. That's how I play. I like my bench to be playing options, and I've got a 4.5 million defender there where he'd maybe have Sofal. So that's what I did structure. I'd be focusing more on my front 11 and having a cheap but playing bench.
Yeah, so perhaps you play Rafinha and downgrade Sofal to a Luke Ayling or a Ben White or someone like that.
Exactly, yeah, exactly that.
Okay, next question from Yat Long Hui, and they say Digne or Shaw?
I'll have to, again, I don't want to kind of just answer in terms of trying to convince people to get the exact same team as me, but I've had that question myself for my own team, and I've gone for Shaw, so Luke Shaw is my answer. However, there is arguments on both sides. There is the fact that Luca Dean's going to be on potentially a lot of set pieces with Gylfi Sigurdsson not available. He could be more clean sheets with defensive-minded Rafa Benitez in charge, etc., etc. So there is an argument to be made, but yeah, I just really like Luke Shaw off the back of last season, and he also has set pieces, and I think they've both got good opening fixtures, haven't they? So for me, I'll wrap this answer up. My answer is Shaw, but they're both good options, and if you do your research and your gut feeling or whatever it is tells you to go Luke Dean, then don't let my answer stop you.
Absolutely. Okay, Luke Byrne says, thoughts on mini wildcards at the start of the season and holding the real wildcard for later on.
Yeah, it's tough. I used my wildcard early last season because I had a poor, it was warranted for my squad. I was hoping to save it. But yeah, I wasn't in a position to do so. But being forced to use it actually worked out beneficially for me, and it put me on a good run. So I'm kind of thinking this year that maybe I should be more proactively looking to use it early. But yeah, I mean, I don't mind a hit early on in the season if it's going to get your team set up right, and if it, a -4 here and there, used sparingly, I should add, is probably worth saving a wild card. But on the flip side of that, I always find that if you save your wild card for, say, Christmas time, for me anyway, the way I play, by the time Christmas has rolled around, sort of game week 16-ish time or whatever, I've kind of already got my squad how I want it, and who's in form, etc., etc. I almost don't need a wild card as much at that point. Whereas early on in the season, because your pre-season squad is so much guesswork pre-season compared to during the season, I always feel like I do better. I don't necessarily start that well in FPL. I normally do better later on. So yeah, I'm kind of rambling on now, but don't be afraid to use your wildcard early. And there's no right or wrong answer to this question, though. I have to stress that.
The dream is to save the wildcard, really, but that really does depend on you by chance having got everything right in your initial team and then your transfers henceforth. But yeah, like you say, if you need to use your wild card, then go ahead and use it, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay, next question from Dark says, can going without Bruno at the start of the season cause trouble?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of, some people are very strongly against having Bruno. Some people are very strongly for that you have to have him. I'm kind of in the middle where I don't think he is a must-have, but he's in my team. He's been in all my drafts, excuse me, and he hasn't gone anywhere. But yeah, for me, it's tough. What do you think on this one? Do you think would you class him as that? Would he almost be essential in your eyes or no?
He was not in any of my drafts all summer until yesterday.
Oh, really? So you've jumped on?
So I've essentially bottled it, really, because like Dark said, can not having Bruno cause trouble? I think yes, it can. It can cause you a bit of grief, and if it doesn't go well and you don't like having Bruno in your team, he doesn't perform how you expect him to, you can always downgrade him to someone like Son or switch to KDB, or if Sterling pops up and becomes Sterling of a couple of years ago. So it's not like he's forever.
Yeah,
but it is definitely safer, I would say, to have Bruno.
100% on that, and I want to back up something that you just said as well about sort of switching to one of those other assets. Because another thing you do, Lukaku's probably going to sign for Chelsea soon. In fact, by the time you're watching this video, maybe he's signed. However, Lukaku's probably not going to start in game week 1, but maybe you want him game week 2, 3, 4 or something. If you have your money tied up in Bruno, then you can go, 2 transfers. You could go maybe, Bruno to Rafinha and one of your cheap strikers to Kane or Lukaku or whatever it might be. Whereas if you downgrade Fernandes now to say Mahrez or Sanchez and spread the money round, it's harder to then raise that capital you need to get that premium striker or premium mid, like you said. But yeah, I'd be wary of spreading. I've seen people spread their funds and they've gone, look, if I go Bruno to like I said, Mahrez or whatever, saving 3 or 4 million, and then they've made their bench much better. But like I said, that causes you problems when you want to jump on a Sterling, KDB, all those ones you said, plus the likes of a Kane or Lukaku up front as well, because no one's really going to have. At the minute, my most expensive striker is 8 million. So if I wanted to get to Kane or Lukaku, I'm going to need to raise 3 or 4 mil. So I like to have it in one player to downgrade rather than having to fish it out of 3 or 4 players in my squad, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes absolutely perfect sense. It's a really good point of being able to just have that money tied up, ready to go for a Lukaku or a Kane, because a lot of people are probably going to struggle / be hesitant to go for these kind of players because they won't have that easy route there. Which could give you a real advantage if you can hop on them fairly easily.
Yeah, 100%.
So, next question is from Rich, And he said, Ings, Antonio, Wilson, all good options, a good front three in FPL if they could stay fit. How many of these would you be confident starting the season with? And he says there's a fine line between being overly cautious and potentially avoiding hauls and being overly risky knowing their injury record. So Ings, Antonio and Wilson, what are your thoughts, Wes?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And it's one of those, I like all three of them individually. And it's such a, like, towards the end, he mentions, is it overly cautious and stuff like that? Because you could potentially be avoiding hauls. And I know people, not last season, but the season before, a lot of people were avoiding someone like Danny Ings, thinking that he'll eventually get injured. And he had an amazing season that year. So people did miss out. And likewise with players like Antonio at certain spells. So there's definitely, you don't want to be too cautious. If one of these players is in red hot form, like we know they can be, get on them. But yeah, I mean, if you're sitting there looking at your front line of all three of those, I'd advise caution, because they could literally all get injured in game week 1. I mean, that's probably very unlikely, but 2 out of the 3 could easily get injured, and all of a sudden you're having to use 2 transfers and a -4 in week 2 on them, whilst also the rest of your squad might need some work, but you can't use your transfers there. So let's say, a couple of your defenders end up not being nailed on, or a midfielder ends up looking like a poor option. You can't actually, without a big minus hit or a wild card, sort it out if you're using your transfers on your injury prone strikers. So for me, I mean, yeah, maybe this is overly cautious. If you're watching this and you disagree, then fair enough. But I would probably only go for 1 out of those 3 pre-season. If all 3 of them not prove me wrong, I believe in them all as assets. If all 3 of them look like they're fit and firing, then sure, you can go for them. But yeah, I would advise caution going for all 3 pre-season.
I'll tell you what, Wes, I am on all 3 right now.
You've got
3 of them.
That's your front 3. So, well, yeah,
that is.
You feel free to disagree at that point and put the counter argument.
Yeah, well, I do think that the Danny Ings injury prone thing, I think that is a bit of a myth. He sort of played was sort of 25 games last season. The season before that, I think he played all 38 during the really good season that he had.
Yeah.
So, prior to that, obviously he had that really, really horrible injury. But since then, I don't think he's had more or less injuries than any other strikers.
That's probably pretty fair. Yeah.
Antonio, completely understand, but it's a case of, when he is fit, and he is right now, you kind of got to have him. And you could arguably say the same thing about Wilson. When they are fit, you kind of got to have them. So, I mean, yes, obviously there's a huge degree of risk if one of the latter 2 does get injured. But, we perhaps be thinking about going for someone like Jimenez come game week 4 anyway, 3 or 4 anyway. So... maybe
it's really interesting. I was literally, as you were talking, I was thinking about Jimenez and him coming back from his injury, and then you literally just said his name. That's very weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's another option there. And I think he tweeted a picture, was it yesterday, of him heading a football, saying and I think he just said, "I'm ready" or something. So he, we know what a good asset he was before his injury. But yeah, like, I want to, there might be people watching thinking I'm talking absolute rubbish, and I definitely don't want to talk anyone out of for yourself. They're your front 3. I'm not going to talk you out of them, because like I said, individually as assets, I like all 3 of them, especially when they're in, they're the types of player that when they're in form, they're almost as good as a, not quite Harry Kane, but they're almost as good as a premium striker, but they're priced cheaper when they are in that red hot form. So yeah, I mean, don't be put off it, but also don't be, it might mean that you are forced into an early wildcard if they do reoccur. I think Ings is an interesting one. We won't dwell on this too much, but like you said, he did have that full season the season before where I'm not sure if it was 38 games, but yeah, it was the large majority at least. I guess it's more the other 2 that seem to pick up more injuries. Is it? Again, I don't have maybe someone out there does proper research into injuries. Someone like Ben Dinnery might be able to help, but it just seems like Antonio muscle injuries a lot. I don't know. I mean, like with many FPL answers and strategies, there's no right or wrong answer, and your strategy of going for all 3 of those down isn't a wrong strategy. It's just, and maybe I'm being overly cautious. So yeah, I mean, Rich, judge that one how you want there. I think you've heard from both of us, and you can make an opinion there.
Yeah, I agree. It's a risk, by the way. So if you're kind of a little bit risk averse, then perhaps going for all 3 is a little bit much.
Yeah.
Just pick one out of Antonio or Wilson. Probably go for Antonio.
Yeah.
Out of the 2. But yeah, if you're happy to take the risk, then go for it. If
Absolutely.
you're not so keen, then yeah, Wes is absolutely spot on with how risky it is. Okay, we'll do a few more questions, I think, before we wrap up. So we've got Mark here has said, how do you think Pickford will do? I feel his attitude and focus has improved greatly, and he will feel he will have a fantastic season. And then he's also said, do you think it's best to only pick 2 Liverpool players for now and hold back for Jota if he explodes with goals? So I guess first of all, Jordan Pickford, what do you think?
I agree with what he's saying about his attitude and focus has improved. I think he hired a psychologist or a kind of a coach for the sort of mental side of things because he was maybe slightly erratic before. So yeah, potentially, and he's playing under Rafa Benitez, so you'd be, the logic suggests that more clean sheets should come Everton's way at some point. But I just do prefer starting the season with a 4.5 million keeper. And also with defenders and goalkeepers, Mark's opinion might be right on Pickford, but it's almost Pickford's main points are going to come from how the team do. And if you think Everton are going to get a lot of clean sheets and you think Pickford's worth spending more than say a Sanchez or a Bachmann, then go for it. But yeah, I just prefer to have my cash tied up at only sort of 8.5, maybe 9 million total for goalkeepers. So that's why I've not really considered Pickford, but I do agree on his action focus improving. I don't know if you wanted to chime in then or if you wanted to move on to the Jota section of the question, Dan.
No, well, I'll very quickly chime in, and I pretty much agree with you. I don't feel that it's convincing enough to spend that little bit of extra money. But yeah, he could very well have a very good season, and if he ended the season as one of the top scoring goalkeepers, I'm sure you wouldn't be entirely surprised. But equally, it could go the other way, couldn't it? Yeah,
I think that's how I feel on Pickford. It's just sticking to 4.5 and 4.0 for keepers at the minute, because those cheaper keepers can and often do. Someone like Martinez last year and other players. I think
the year before.
Yeah, exactly. They normally match or get pretty close to those sort of premium or mid-price goalkeepers anyway. So I just don't think there's the value there in spending the extra money on these keepers from better clubs, because they all, the cheaper keepers tend to even do better or match them. So it just doesn't make sense to me.
Absolutely. And then obviously with the Liverpool players, 2 Liverpool players for now, and then maybe see who else is going to be one of the bigger players for Liverpool.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough for me. I have got 3 at the minute, and it does include Tsimikas. I think that's how you say it.
Tsimikas, yes.
Tsimikas, okay. So I don't know. Holding back to wait if Jota explodes. I like the fact that he's thinking about that and waiting to see with someone like Jota, because he can be. I had him for periods towards the end of last season, and maybe this is a bias I need to get rid of, but he did frustrate me with. I think he picked up an injury or 2 towards the end of last season, or get rotated out, and you thought he was going to start in the easy games, but he ends up not. I didn't seem to catch his big points last season, so yeah, there's a kind of bias in my head against him, which I do need to get rid of, because that's not helpful to anyone, but. Holding back. I don't know. I'm currently on 3 Liverpool. Will I regret that come week 2 if I do fancy Jota? Maybe, but I'm happy to, not have FOMO over players. And if Jota's getting points, then fair enough. But I'll have, the likes of Trent, Salah, and Tsimikas who can get me points as well as Jota's a 7.5 million midfielder. Maybe there's another one who can match Jota from another club, someone like Barnes, like I was talking about earlier. So. No right or wrong answer. I do like the fact that he's thinking about these things and thinking about holding back. It's good to see that Mark is using strategy here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just looking through some of the other questions, because we have covered some of these other things that I've said here. Just
quickly, Dan, whilst you're looking for a question, just thought I'd use this opportunity to actually thank everyone for putting in the questions. It's a brand new video as well, and we only put out the tweet sort of 12 hours before recording it or something like that, so we didn't give people much time, but yeah, loads of people jumped on board and asked really, really good questions, so thanks for that, and keep them coming in each week, and we'll obviously try our best to answer as many as we can, won't we?
Yes, thank you very much, guys. I have found another question. I think It's kind of something a little bit different, which I haven't heard spoken about too much, and this is from FPL Safir, who says, who is a better pick, Grealish or Mahrez? And maybe we should sort of expand this to all Man City midfielders, because a lot of people have kind of spoken a little bit about Man City midfielders. Do you go for one? Do you take that risk? What do you think, Wes?
Yeah, it's so tough. Man City just constantly. We know what Pep's like for years and years and years. Every player that, I think I remember Bernardo Silva scored a hat trick one week and then was dropped the next. And it's so hard to predict. Whereas with other clubs, it's like you can predict. I could probably reel off the Burnley starting 11 each week, for example.
Yeah.
So with City mids, especially when they're all fit, it's really tricky. And with someone like, I think the question was Grealish versus Mahrez, wasn't it? Grealish is a new signing to City. Pep's obviously an amazing player. I love Grealish, one of the most talented players in the league for sure. But does that translate into FPL points? What's his role going to be for City? Is it going to be the assist before the assist? Is he going to be more central midfield rather than up top trying to shoot and create? So there's a wait and see element with Grealish, in my opinion. Probably out the City mids to kind of be decisive. If I had to pick one, it would probably be Gundogan.
Really?
Yeah. Again, and it could be a mistake again because his role changes depending on who's fit for City. Maybe he won't be that sort of goal scoring mid. Maybe he'll sit back a little bit more. So that's why I actually haven't got him in my team. But out of the ones available, I think he's kind of the cheapest at 7.5. He has obviously got a goal in him, like we know. I think they've got a bit of an issue at centre forward at the minute, haven't they? With obviously no Aguero, Kane hasn't signed. Don't really know what's going on with Jesus. So maybe that helps Gundogan get forward and be the one to score. I don't know. I don't feel confident in any City asset. That's why I'm avoiding them. And people ask me like, "Oh, what's your plan for a City asset in Gameweek 2?" For me, if I don't go for one pre-season, I probably will just ride out that City versus Norwich game. Yes, City players will score FPL points in that game, but again, it's just rotation. It's so much rotation there. I want as many nailed-on players in my squad as possible because it's very, it's very good. It's all good and well having these explosive players like your Cancelos, your Mahrez, your Gundogans, etc., etc. I know Cancelo's a defender, by the way, but a player nailed on is very important for FPL because you need to be able to back this player to start and get your points regularly, sort of tick over with points rather than be explosive and then get benched. So yeah, I'm off City mids. I think I had to pick, like I said, it would be Gundogan, but is that the right decision? I don't know.
Yeah, the most frustrating thing is that if you were to pick that right City midfielder or attacker, and you happen to get it right, then you are absolutely laughing. Your rank is going to absolutely rocket. But the chances of you getting it right is so remote that it's arguably just not worth taking the risk at all. And it will be someone in your mini league, someone who plays the game fairly a little bit more casually. They will by chance they would have picked one random player, whether it's Ferran Torres or Bernardo Silva, or someone you might not have even thought of from Man City. Yeah. They'll smash it and they'll go 30 points ahead of you, and you'll be really upset. But just remember, it's the long game, guys. It's about the long game. The long game
for sure. So, and on that note, I'd back that up by saying I think you kind of mentioned it earlier about starting with someone like Bruno, and then if Bruno isn't looking as good, if Bruno's not looking worth 12 million, for example, and one of those City mids is firing, you downgrade to that City mid, whoever it is, because you can afford any of them by going Bruno to them in one transfer, and then you use that spare money, like I said, on Kane or Lukaku. If you've got a striker not doing well and one of those two looks like they're going to be red hot, then you can play about there. So you're not going to be, by not choosing a City mid pre-season. For my team, I haven't got any City players. It doesn't mean I won't jump on them when I have a bit more information about who's most nailed, etc., etc. So. Yeah, I think for me, City's my strategy for City is not to start with any and jump on the assets once we know them using my transfers.
Well, there you go. From the man himself, there's the City spiel. That's probably the most I've spoken about City all pre-season because I've just been disregarding them completely for the aforementioned reasons. But yeah, it's nice to verbalise it and give that kind of opinion across a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think we've covered quite a decent spectrum of questions there. Yeah. So I'm happy to wrap this up now if you are, Wes.
Yes, mate. Yeah, I think we got through a fair amount. Sorry to those who we haven't got to, but yeah, like I said, ask us a question every single week, and we'll try and get to as many as we can.
Yeah, Absolutely. So yeah, thanks guys for watching this video. Guys, don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed what you saw today. Do subscribe to the channel as well. There is so much stuff on Fantasy Football Hub this year. You've probably seen it already for the pre-season stuff that Fantasy Football Hub have been doing on YouTube. It's been a mad one, and we know Wes that's going to continue all season. There's so much planned, isn't there?
It is, yeah. There's absolutely loads planned and just ramping up. I think the sort of YouTube, again with the YouTube channel, just to give a bit of insight to that, that's going to be like tripling the amount of content we're putting out on site, the articles, and I can't take any credit for the articles on there at the minute. There's so much on there and so much good quality stuff. It's unreal. And the tools, the Rate My Team tool that's come out is very, very good. And like I think you mentioned the Opta earlier as well. I use that a lot, and that's something that I urge people to get used to a bit as well, because the first time I used it, I didn't actually realise how much you could edit it and use the functionality. So just get into it a little bit and spend half an hour on it, getting used to everything, and then you realise how good it is.
Oh yeah, it's really powerful. It's my favourite tool on the whole website. Yeah. I use it literally every single day. I've made a nice custom Opta stats sheet as well for goalkeepers that I use for goalkeepers. So it really is
nice.
It's quite complex, isn't it? But once you get used to it, it's just so powerful. It's so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, guys. Well, thanks once again for watching this video. I hope my Fantasy Football Hub debut was not too bad. Looking forward to doing this video with you every single week, Wes. For 38 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Long season ahead.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Cheers, Dan. That's a very enjoyable video with yourself.
Yes. And see you again next week for this video, Wes, and see you guys next week for the next iteration of this video. Thanks once again for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.